one of the things that is also not really valued in our culture is doulas, because we have been taught that the medical system knows what's best for us and that a doula is a nice little luxury item, but not a necessity. Well, the funny thing is that before birth got into the hospitals, we had doulas. They were called gossips back then, and they were consisting of our mothers and our cousins and our aunts and our sisters, and even our children as we grew older and older and we had more kids. So our older daughters would come into that birth space too. So we would grow up in that culture of women and basically see birth as a natural process. We learned how to hold space for each other. We learned how to trust in nature. We learned how to actually facilitate what was happening, not control it. The masculine energy is more controlling, and it has its place. I'm not going to say that it's bad or wrong to have masculine energy, because, hey, even as women, we have that masculine energy. But the feminine energy is all about surrender, and it's more cyclical. So nature is a very feminine process. And same with birth. Birth is obviously a feminine process. And it's all about surrendering and facilitating what is happening, not trying to control it. But our medical system has really gotten to this habit of controlling. And I'm going to just say this, some doulas also, we have to unlearn that masculine energy of control, and some are more controlling than others. So when I say you need to have the right environment and the right support and the right facilitators, what I really mean is that you need to have someone who understands birth, and not in the technocratic model in which here's the uterus and then you get here's the cervix and you get to 1 centimeter and then you get to 3 centimeters and then like it continues, like you're basically a machine. No, understanding the actual cyclical nature. And I mean, hey, I will say it until you get it. Until you get this book, I'm just going to keep telling you about it, and you're just going to keep wondering what's going on with this book. I've told all of my birth worker friends about this book. Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage is my all-time favorite book right now, and it's what I'm teaching inside of the Take Charge of Birth classes every week as part of our curriculum. And I'm just sitting there and we're discussing this book because it is like the best book to help you not only unlearn and understand where our culture came from and why we have so much mistrust in birth, but also understanding your cyclical processes even outside of birth, in your postpartum, in your menstruation, in your perimenopause in the future, in your menopause, and all of that wisdom and that women's knowledge that was basically lost in the patriarchy. So here's the problem, though, with doulas not being really valued or we're seen more as a luxury item that's a nice to have but not a necessity. I see this quite often inside of the birth groups where people are like, has anybody had a doula? Is it really worth it? I mean, they're kind of expensive, aren't they? Well, let me just put this another way, okay? So I happen to charge at a little bit of a higher rate because of how inclusive my own packages are, where I'm working with clients for sometimes 3 to 6 months before they even have their baby. And I meet with them every single week. And we talk about all of their fears because I believe that the right mindset is the most important piece. And typically, most doulas only meet with you maybe a few times for prenatal visits, and then they come when you're in labor, and then they might have a postpartum. All our packages are different. So I just want to explain that to you, first of all, is that it really depends on which kind of doula you get and what you're looking for in that experience. And I'm going to say it the same way that we have care providers that give maternity care a bad name. We also have doulas that don't really hold up to what we expect from a doula. But that doesn't mean that we're all like that. And I have like so many friends, like probably 80% of my friends now are doulas, and the rest are like coaches, maybe not in the doula sphere, but a coach in themselves has been told, we've been taught that it's like a midwife who helps birth your dreams and your next level empowerment. One of my mentors, Annie Lala, says that all the time. She's like, they're like a midwife. And I want to say it at some point. I'm going to be like, actually, Annie, it's also like a doula too, because that's what we do. But I'm going to say this, is that all coaches are basically doulas. That's what our role is to hold space. But not all doulas are coaches. And you really want to have a doula who is going to also represent the role of the coach. That can be in just holding space for you, but also they need to believe in you. But I get it. It is an investment. And the reason for that, of course, is because we take a lot of time away from our own families to come and serve you and to hold space. I mean, that's not easy. And it kind of hurts my feelings sometimes when people who don't understand what a doula is, especially some nurses, who then say, oh, well, you're just a glorified ice chip fetcher. It's like, you have no idea what a doula does. So for those of you who have never had a doula or haven't had the right doula, I'm going to tell you right now what a doula really is to me. Like, this is my definition. When I say hire a doula, this is what I mean. You want somebody who is completely knowledgeable in physiological birth. You want normal birth. Because if you're hiring a doula, you want them to be able to protect that space of normalcy. You don't want somebody who only understands the medical model, because we already have that. That's a nurse. That's sometimes a midwife, which we call a medwife. That's a doctor. But a doula, the ones that I work with, the ones I love and adore, are the ones that understand physiological birth. And they understand how to basically hold space, step back, not ask, well, are you dilated or anything like that? Or do you feel your contractions? We're not timing the contractions at the same rate that a nurse might. We're not assessing that as progress. Instead, we're listening for sounds. We're making sure there's a certain energy in the room. Like, we can usually feel it depending on how in tune we are with it. We can recognize what's happening and we can advocate for you. But more importantly, and this is a question that I get quite often of, well, can't my partner be my doula? Unless your partner is willing to spend years doing nothing but researching about physiological birth before you even get pregnant, they're probably not going to be able to cut it out, because they have also grown up in that culture of fear, and they haven't really understood that with birth, you need to let go. The other thing is that your partner has a different role. As the masculine energy, whether male or female partner, they are your protector. They are the one that's also holding space and giving you that container and giving you that love and support. And a doula facilitates that. We step back and we see the partnership as like a dyad. So I'm not just watching my client and seeing her movements, but I'm also watching her partner. And I'm carefully guiding her partner at the same time. And I'm saying, okay, yeah, you've got this. You're rubbing her back. I don't need to do anything here. I'm just going to step back. I'm going to observe. And then when you start to get anxious again, partner, I'm going to come in and I'm going to be like, it's okay. Like, she's doing fine. Because if your partner is just doing that work for you and holding space for you, but they don't have somebody holding them, and then the doctor comes in and says that something's not normal, they're going to panic, and then they're going to go with what the doctor says or what the nurse says. They're going to feel anxious because they don't have somebody holding that space. Sometimes with some of my doula friends, they even have a doula for their doula. So some of my friends work in teams, and they come in and they're basically holding space for each other so that they can also support their client. So again, when you're looking at doulas, don't think of it as a glorified ice chip fetcher. We don't just do that. And we're not just there to rub your back. And we're not just there to encourage you and say, you're doing great. We do so much more than that, so much more than what is really conveyed in a lot of the mainstream. And the thing is that with doula work, we also tend to see the other side of things, of what's going on inside the birth world. We know of different options because we often attend births in different areas. Like I myself am a virtual doula and I attend home births. So I'm usually on Zoom and I attend the home births. However, I have a large network of friends in the doula community who attend hospital births. So I know that if I have somebody who may not be a client, but is somebody who's coming to me for help, and they're like, hey, which hospital should I go to because I can't have a home birth or I don't want a home birth. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at them and I'm like, okay, which area are you in? Now I'm going to talk to my friends. Now I'm going to find out where would be the best place for you based on what you want. So I sometimes ask people questions. I'm like, okay, so where are you located? What do you want for your birth? What do you want to avoid? And what are your resources? Like, do you have money to spend on a doula? Because if you don't, then there are things that I can do to help you. Although I'm going to be talking about that in a minute, about how you can afford a doula, because everybody deserves a doula. Everybody needs a doula. Doulas, I cannot stress this enough. If you think that the nurse is going to be your best support, they might be only in the sense that if they have values that are aligned with what you want, but it's still a crapshoot. You don't know which nurse you're going to get. And some of them love natural birth, and other ones are like, ugh, a mom with a birth plan. And then there's the ones that prefer everybody get the epidural. And they will push it and push it and push it and push it. I hear about this all the time with my doula friends when they tell me about what they had to deal with to try to hold space for a client. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty. So while there are some good nurses who understand physiological birth, there's also the nurses who are good in the sense that they want you to feel comfortable, but the only option they really understand is the epidural. So they think that that's the saving thing. They still want to save you. Nobody comes into this wanting to do harm unless they're a sadistic person. And I talked last week about how 1/3 of medical professionals are narcissists. And those are the ones that I would say probably got into it to teach women a lesson and put them in their place, and they suck. And we need to do everything we can to get them out. But we can't do that unless we start recognizing that that's not okay and don't stand for it anymore, and then deliberately not hire them. And you can't do that if you don't know what else is on the other side and what to really look for. So what I shared a few days ago was a post from a friend of mine, and she is a nurse clinician, and she was saying how she empowers care providers who she feels are the good ones to continue to trust the parents and not go by a tick box and be like condescending in some ways, actually in many ways. Okay, so what are the big excuses I get for not hiring a doula? Well, one was money. It's just too much of an expense. The other one I just covered, where people are like, well, I don't really see what the role is, how it's different from a nurse, how it's different from a midwife. Your midwife is not there to basically rub your back and facilitate that comfort, that emotional support. That's what your doula is there for. And your partner, as I said, they're probably not going to be able to do it unless they really understand birth. I mean, in my case, if I got a partner in the next 3 years or so, and I decided to have another baby, I could probably train him up, just like I train up the partners of my clients, to be able to hold space for me. And even though I could do that, I still am hiring my doula friends. I'm probably going to have like 3 or 4 of them doing rotations of every 4 hours because I don't want them to be like up all night with me or anything. But the idea would be I want to have that feminine presence. I want to have that female support, that female energy. And I'd probably hire a midwife and she'd be in the corner knitting. And I'd birth my baby on my own. Because that's what we as a culture and as humans, that's what we were designed biologically to do. There have always been women helping other women in the birth space. I was reading inside of Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage that certain animals, specifically the bonobos, for the primates, they're the ones that have a big female presence when babies are born. Chimpanzees, which we were thought to be closer related to, but it's not true. We're actually closer related to the bonobos. The chimpanzees birth alone because the female chimpanzees who are not birthing will actually try to steal a baby. So it's very different. But we're not worrying about other women stealing our babies. This is not The Handmaid's Tale. So we actually, as a culture, evolved to have that feminine support. And then, as pretty much the patriarchal history goes, men decided that they wanted to control birth. And suddenly they put birth into the hospitals. And the women's community was gone. So we didn't have our sisters, and we didn't have our mothers, and we didn't grow up seeing birth as normal anymore. We saw it as very abnormal. We got that fear. And doctors also deliberately made it sound a lot more dangerous than it really was to birth because they wanted to get paid. So again, you can read all about that inside of the chapter. I believe it's Her Story, in the first half of Rachel Reed's book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. Okay, so you know now you need a doula, because a doula has all of the experience and understanding about physiological birth, the good ones. As I said, not all doulas are created equal, and I will tell you in another time what you want to do to really find that doula. But basically, the same thing applies with your care provider. Is you just want to write down everything that you really need for your birth. If you've already had one birth where things didn't go right, or if you had a doula the last time and maybe it wasn't a good fit, you can also write out what worked and what didn't, what qualities you still want and which ones you don't. As I said before, the more you understand what your needs are, the better you are able to hire the person who's right for you. And I do have one little recommendation. If you're going to hire a doula, hire one that loves birth. Because the ones that love birth, the ones that are actually passionate about serving you, are going to go the extra mile, rather than somebody who's starting to burn out, doesn't really want to do this anymore, is really only doing this because they're trying to just keep a roof over their kids' heads, but their heart's just not in it anymore. You don't want those people, because even though like there's a place for them, if you're looking for someone who's absolutely passionate about birth and passionate about serving you and giving you the kind of birth that you want, then they are going to go the extra mile. I myself am the kind of person that unless something absolutely lights me up, I'm not going to do it. I've gotten to the point in my life now, in my 30s, that anytime somebody says, hey, you can do this job and you'll get some money from it, I'm like, no, that's not it. That's not it for me. I'm very picky with my clients as well, because I want to be able to love them, and I need to be able to feel that light. If I'm not lit up, if I don't feel it doesn't matter. Like, I can't do it, because I need to be able to go above and beyond for people. It's just who I am. I believe that any job worth doing is worth doing above and beyond. And so I bring that to my work, and I bring that with my clients. And because of that, I usually only take about one client every couple of months, and I work with them long term because I really want to see them built up, and I want to see them after postpartum as well, so that they can continue to be empowered. So I'm different from a lot of doulas in that way because I really, really get into my clients' lives and I really help them get to the next level. And at the coaching side of it happens more so in the beginning before birth, and it also happens after birth. But hey, maybe that's not your jam. Maybe you want somebody who's really good at Reiki. In that case, you find somebody who knows Reiki. Or maybe you want somebody who has more knowledge about yoga. I don't have the knowledge about yoga for pregnancy. I do have friends, however, that do have yoga. So start to think about what you want. Now, the big one, how do you afford it? Because doulas are not covered under medical care. They're not covered under insurance. There's a reason for that. And honestly, I don't want us to ever be regulated or put under insurance plans or paid through medical. That is a terrible, terrible idea. And the reason I'm telling you it's a terrible, terrible idea is because look what has happened to our midwives. Our midwives were once independent childbirth educators and independent birth attendants, and they were able to practice in a way in which they could facilitate what was happening. But now that they are regulated, they get in trouble if their clients decline vaginal exams. They can get told, you can't support this client. They've passed 42 weeks. This client now has to leave your care and go for an induction. Some midwives are not allowed to support VBAC, vaginal birth after cesarean. Nope. You can't have a midwife for that. Not at home. You have to go to the hospital where we control things and we regulate and we push you into another C-section, or we at least medicalize your birth enough that it's not that physiological birth that you really want, which is so horrible. And this is why I specifically take clients who have had inductions or cesareans, and they're like, no, absolutely not. Like, if I have to, I will birth at home by myself and just have somebody facilitate that and help me trust in myself so that I can birth my baby on my own terms, which is what happened with Rebecca, is that she birthed that baby on her own terms after 2 previous C-sections, and she's got her power back. And so the thing about the registration, the regulation, is that if doulas were actually regulated, we would not be able to advocate for you the way that we really need to. We wouldn't be able to question your care providers. We wouldn't be able to help you question your care providers. We wouldn't be there to say to you, you have the right to say no to this. Because when midwives try to say it, they have to say it with reading between the lines because they're being watched. Unless you're at a home birth, they're being watched in the hospital. They're being watched by their colleagues. There was a quote, I don't have it fully, but basically inside of Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage, there was this quote where this midwife was talking, she was anonymous, and she was saying how the client didn't want her waters broken. I knew that there was no need for it. But then this OB poked their head in the door and said, why are the membranes still intact? Well, now there's conflict between what the hospital wants, what the OB is recommending as the overseeing big boss. And then the poor midwife is kind of like, which way do I go? So we don't want that with doulas. So you want your doula to be independent. And the way to keep it independent is to realize what it's worth to have a doula and to just start saving up for it. I mean, we save up for cribs, we save up for car seats, we save up for strollers, and those things only last like a few years, maybe a handful of kids, but birth, it lasts for your entire life. Like, you will never again get to birth this baby. So when people are like, I can't afford a doula, I have so many solutions, and I'm going to give you a few of them. Number one, put it on your registry. Forget about all of those baby clothes. Forget about the brand new stroller. Forget about the brand new crib. Forget about the brand new bassinet. Okay, do you have any idea how much baby gear I got with my first baby, like from my family and friends? Like, they were all just really excited. But then on top of that, everybody who had already had kids, they were eager to just unload that stuff on me. So I didn't need to buy anything brand new. And the fact is that you can find this stuff, but here's another really tough lesson that I learned. I spent $600 on a brand new crib that I thought was going to be this amazing convertible crib that would convert into a toddler bed, and then it would go into a day bed, and then it would also grow with my child to be like the only bed they ever need, because it would go into a double bed. And I thought I was so clever. Last night, my almost 6-year-old daughter climbed out of her bunk bed and climbed back into bed with me. Now, I just finally got her into her own bed again, because she was feeling very anxious after the divorce. She did not want to sleep alone. But even as a baby, they did not want to sleep in their crib. And their crib became a place for stuffed animals. That super awesome swing that I needed to have, and I saved up my money for, and I went out and got that. My kids were, I told Rebecca this the other day, the last time I talked to her, and I told her, it's like, you know, it's awesome that your baby sleeps in the swing, because mine at 3 months old actually tried to flip out of it. So Hunter and Michaela never wanted to sleep in their swing, and I tried everything to get them to sleep in the swing, but they did not want it. And when they were awake, they were trying to get out of it. And at one point, I think Hunter was 3 months old, and he flipped himself out of it. So he had like the back of the swing, like the fabric part, and it was pulled, and he was hanging almost like Mission Impossible style, dangling out of the swing. So the swing had to go at 3 months. And I bought that when he was a month old. So the swing really only lasted like 2 months, and then it was nothing. It was pointless. I put it away, and I said maybe for the next one. And then Michaela tried to do the same thing. So instead of worrying about the baby gear when your baby is like a newborn and they're not really going to use it at that point, maybe wait and just see what kind of baby you've got, because sometimes that stuff just doesn't work. Another one, of course, is if you're buying a whole bunch of newborn outfits. Hate to tell you this, but your baby is going to outgrow them. I mean, seasoned parents, you get it. Like, the second you buy something new, your kid is outgrowing it by the next week. So don't spend your money on that. Don't even ask people to buy brand new. Some outfits are nice for brand new, but you probably only need like a handful of them, and buy the next size up. And also, if you've got friends with kids, they probably have a whole bunch of hand-me-downs. Or go on Marketplace. Marketplace is constantly trying to get rid of stuff because we don't want it. I have a whole box full of stuff for my daughter when she was 4, and stuff for my son from just a couple of months ago, barely worn, that's just in boxes, and I'm waiting to get it to Big Brothers because, like, we just want to get rid of it. So honestly, you can save up for a doula if you start to cut down on your clothing budget for kids. Put them in sleepers for the first few months. They're babies. They don't care. And they look so cute in their sleepers. So it's a win-win. Another one that is a good way to start covering your doula costs is, as soon as you get pregnant, start putting some money away. Doulas can range anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000, depending on who you get. And some of us can be a little bit more because we have more experience and we bring more to the table. So if you parcel that out, it's probably saving about maybe $150 to $250 per month. Sometimes less than that, depending on who you get. But do not just go with the cheapest doula, because really that's you're getting what you pay for, and the cheapest doula may not be the best one for you. So finally, people ask you, well, what should we get you? What do you need? You say doula fund. Your birthday, doula money. Christmas or any other holidays that you celebrate, doula money. Maybe get rid of cable for a while, or one of your streaming services, maybe cut one of those. Find ways to save some money. And if you're not pregnant yet and you're thinking of having another one, start saving now. Before I had Michaela, I'd actually started to put money away for my doula, because I knew I was going to pay her what she was worth at that point. So I asked her what the going rate was and what her rate would be. And she told me. And so I'm like, got it. Back then it was 600, because I mean, Michaela's almost 6 now. It's a lot more than that today. But the idea was, I'm going to invest in this. This is important to me, because I am not going to have another birth where I don't have somebody holding space for me. And I need to have that support and that knowledge. Because here's another thing, is a doula stands for your birth vision. We really take the time to get to know what you want, and we believe in you. Whereas a lot of your friends and family, if you go and say, I'm going to have a natural birth at home by myself, and I might call the midwife at the end, they'll freak out. Especially if you've had a C-section before, they will freak out. But a doula is like, you got this. You got this. I believe in you. I totally believe you can do this. And I believe it from a place of true believing. And here's more resources that you need, but you have everything that you need right now. So a lot of the times when my clients have doubts, or even when they're not my clients, they're just people that I'm talking to, I'm like, you know what? You can do it. You want to go without an epidural? Go for it. You can do that. Totally. Hey, you had an induction before and you're wanting a natural birth this time? Oh, well, if you were able to handle that induction and deal with Pitocin, like, I'm telling you, woman, you're going to be absolutely fine with this. Like, this is a completely different ballgame. This is going to be so easy. It's going to be a cakewalk. And I really stand for that. Whereas your friends and family and the mommy shaming groups are like, I mean, you could try, but I mean, it's probably dangerous. And I read this, and you really should listen to your doctor about this. And are you sure that you should be doing that? And it's undermining. You don't want that energy in your space. And you want that protection for your partner too. Because if your partner is also getting that, and they're hearing through their friends and family, oh, you know, is she really going to do that? Then that might start putting doubts in their head. I saw it with my own partner, my ex. And I've also seen it with a lot of partners of clients and people that I've worked with in the past over, oh my God, it's been almost 9 years now that I've been doing this, and I've seen the patterns. So bottom line, you need a doula. There's lots of ways to get one. We also do payment plans. So that's another option. Some doulas, they like the money up front, and others are like, you know what, like, you can do this in installments. And sometimes they can even do installments for over a year. It all depends on what their prices are and what their needs are. Because here's another thing. While it seems like a big investment up front, when you break it down, for about $3,000 for 6 months, that's less than $1,000 a month. And if that's one of her main sources of income, and she only takes on a certain amount of clients, then you're not even factoring in her actual expenses for driving to you, or taking time to get childcare for her kids, or the meals that she has. Some doulas even give gifts to their clients. Some doulas even have extra equipment. Virtual, I don't have any of that. However, because I only take a certain number of people, like I'm tapped out at a certain point, and I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm not taking on another client because I want to be able to give my all to this one. So I actually sat in on a class with in the Transforming Birth Luminaries, and Michelle was actually asking, she's like, okay, what are you guys charging? And then she looked at us and said, you are like actually in the red here. Once you take all the expenses and everything, like you're barely making anything. So the fact that we do this work and that we get paid what we get paid, like honestly, you're getting probably, well, my client said we saved $30,000 by hiring you. Because when you go into the hospital, of course, they had the insurance and it would have been $30,000 for them to go in and possibly just end up having another C-section. But they didn't have to do that. Instead, they paid me on an installment, and I continued to meet with them, and they had this amazing home birth, and that was worth way more than $30,000, and they saved $30,000. So the first thing you want to do is basically shift your mindset here, is that the investment of a doula is worth a long-term value of having an empowered birth, of having somebody to hold space, of having somebody who actually understands what's going on and can reassure your partner or reassure your family member who's also supporting you. They advocate for you. They protect you. Birth trauma counseling is not something that, like, it's actually more expensive to do birth trauma counseling in comparison to hiring a doula, especially since you've got the long-term effects of birth trauma. So whatever you need to do, I want you to start thinking about hiring a doula. And if you are already done having kids, I want you to pass this on to anybody in your life that you care about who is thinking of having kids, so that they know that they need to have a doula. And if you have any questions on how to find a doula in your area, or what to look for, or you're not quite sure what you even need for a doula for your specific circumstances, you can always send me a message or send me an email if it's better for you at carly@empoweringmomsbirth.ca. And I will see you next week. Okay, bye.